I was really focused on my kids' disobedience, and I was taking it personally with that victim mentality. And so I was always reacting to my children's disobedience. I was not responding to it in a godly and biblical way.
Welcome to the Focus on the Family broadcast, helping families thrive.
Welcome back to Focus on the Family.
We are so glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
We covered some ground last time, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Last time, Jean was able to join in. She's had to leave, so she's not going to be with us today. But what helpful insights there were. Let me kick it off with this question, Wendy. A couple of triggers for you have been all the noise and all the mess. Oh, moms just went, yep, my triggers. Yeah. Those are my triggers.
We hear it all the time.
A lot of women can relate to this. How has God worked through your heart on this? How have you realized I can relax on the mess? Maybe even how does your husband embrace that? Because so often there's a little bit of conflict there. Husbands like order and, they want their environment kind of tidy. Right. Have you dealt with all that?
Well, in the whole book, dealing with trigger after trigger, there are moments where we focus on the child's behavior, but really the lion's share of the encouragement is, what's going on with you, Mom, that you can't cope, that you become a hot mess when there is a mess in your home? Why does the mess in your home make a mess out of you? And the same is true with all the noise. Mommy's ears are bleeding, take it outside. And what I've learned is that we can do things both externally and internally to deal with that stress. We can actually, for example, the mess. I have one room. That's the front room. We don't spend as much time in that room. And I have learned if I keep that room rather organized, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I have a place that is visually peaceful for me to go.
And that's good
enough. And
that's
just a technical thing. Well, I don't know if it's always good enough, but it's what I can do in the season. I'm homeschooling kids. I've got kids' friends coming through, and I want to be available to living a life that requires a messy house. If I want a home full of people, if I want to have people at my table, if I want to host parties for my kids, then the consequence of that is that we will have a mess. And I am more passionate about being available to my kids than about being in control of my home. Because really, we can't have a flourishing home life and a clean home all the time.
And how do you and your husband have that discussion? Has that ever been an issue? Is he good with it?
You know, he actually likes more order than I do.
Okay, so he has expressed some kind of desire.
And we have in our budget right now the room to have someone come in and help me every couple weeks.
Yep.
So we're making that, when you break down your budget and you've got your line items, sometimes it fits in our budget and sometimes it doesn't. And another thing, as they grow older, and even when they're young, you put on the song, clean up, everybody, everywhere. And the whole kids, they say, we're just focusing on the family room, or you're just focusing on your rooms.
I like that room.
So there are some technical things that you can do. And I've learned that lots of parents have a problem with those, they call them the witching hours. You're making dinner, and then after that, everyone goes downhill and it's chaos in the home. And then at that time, you're also wanting to do cleanup around the house. So you can make some plans. We keeps coming back to the idea of, if you have a recurring issue, a recurring trigger in your home, make a plan. Try something new. So during that time when I'm doing that, I say, okay, who wants to choose the song? And we'll put on a song on repeat. I say, we've got 10 minutes of Jesus Freak by DC Talk.
Yep.
We're just going to play it on loop while all you got to do is your room and the family room while I get dinner on the table. And then we're going to be ready to just have a great evening after dinner. And so it's one of the things, it's a plan. I've made a plan. Yeah. But there are times I do not have a plan, and I lose it with my kids. And what I've had to realize is I'm not actually responding to my child. I'm responding to me feeling out of control in my home. Yeah. So my house is a mess. There's too much noise. And then my child dares act like a child, right? I need help with my shoelace. But why do you need help with your shoelace? Do you not see how much chaos
I'm getting you Velcro.
Yeah. We did slip-ons for years. So just realizing that the noise and the mess can be that thing that makes us feel unsteady. And so when we have to parent on unsteady ground, everything shakes.
But I like
everything
that as a
shakes.
theme. Try to make that ground more steady by
Making some plans.
Yeah, making some plans.
And
That's
bringing
good.
the kids into it so
Yeah.
you don't feel like that victim that we talked about
it's
last time.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Amber, let me ask you this. You share that you were blindsided in motherhood by exhaustion. What were the first few years of motherhood like for you? And how did you learn to rely on God? I mean, every
Yeah.
woman's leaning in right now going, yes,
Yes.
tell me the answer.
Yes, absolutely. My firstborn son, my sweet Oliver, he was beautiful and perfect in every way except that he had extreme colic and reflux and never slept.
Yeah.
And I was totally unprepared for that. And it sort of wrecked me and my husband. We were getting only maybe 15 minutes of sleep at a time during
wow.
the night. We hired a sleep expert. She gave us our money back. I mean, it was
Good thing you had a
terrible.
guarantee.
Yeah, she
But
did.
how long did that last?
It lasted a good almost 2 years.
Oh, my
He
goodness.
did
And by
it
that
sleep.
time, you had another newborn.
And I had another baby along by that time. And so we were not sleeping well. And about halfway into those 2 years, after the sleep expert told us, she said, he's just not a sleeper. And when she said that, I felt such freedom because I had been trying to fix my child. And there are certain situations where we can't fix our children or we can't fix the circumstances. And it may be an actual sleep deprivation situation like I was experiencing. It could just be that we are weary. We're just weary from our teenagers' rebellion.
Yeah, we're weary from the struggle.
We're weary from the struggle. We're weary that our child has some special needs. And it's just day in and day. And there really is no light necessarily at the end of the tunnel. And so I had this really prayerful time in the middle of the night one night when I was holding Oliver, rocking him tearfully. And I just very personally had this picture of Jesus holding me as I held Oliver all through the night, just all through the night. And so I just began to pray, Lord, I'm snapping a lot at my husband. We're both on edge because we're so sleep deprived and we're exhausted. And it can be so grueling and hopeless feeling. And I just sensed that, the Lord was speaking to my heart through his word, but he was just saying to me, Amber, this was really about refining you. This is really about you. And so you need to rest in me. And so be exhausted, but do the good parenting anyway.
Yes, I love the word weary, and it reminds me of the verse from Galatians that we talk about a lot. Let us not grow weary in doing good, and we say in doing the good parenting. For in due season we shall reap a harvest if we do not lose heart. And
Don't give
whether
up.
it's real weariness, I'm not sleeping, or just being weary of the struggle, of the constancy. One of the things that we hear from people all the time is, when will they ever learn? When are they going to mature? And when will it be over? And it feels like there's no hope. And we just say, press in and press on.
Yeah.
You press into Jesus and you say, I trust that you will complete what you have started. And he says that he's going to do that with us, but oftentimes our focus is on our child's behavior. And we're like, okay, Lord, when are you going to complete what you started here? Because I'm ready for that child to stop X, Y,
Yeah, my
Z.
timeline is right
yes,
now.
I'm here now.
But I'm mindful of the mom who is still back there. She's not getting that impression, Amber, of Jesus holding her as she holds her child at 2 a.m. and that little one is screaming and it's colicky or whatever the situation might be. How does she find that hope in that hopelessness?
I think one of the things that I did also is that I lowered my expectation for myself. I was still trying to put a lot into my day, be the kind of parent I thought I was going to be. And I was just too tired to do it all. So it created a lot of stress for me. And for a long time, I didn't sense that the Lord was alongside me. I spent all my time praying that he would change my circumstances. And really, it was just this personal journey kind of over some of that time where I had to make a choice and say, I know that this situation may not be improving. And so I really have to go back to the word and remember what God's promises are. And so I started to focus there, even though I didn't feel it. And I had to say, okay, the Lord tells me that when I am weak, he is strong. and I'm feeling really weak right now. And Lord, I can't even necessarily sense that you're with me, holding me through this. So I'm going to choose to believe your promises and that you will never leave me, you will never forsake me, that you work all things for my good, that you will give me wisdom when I ask for it, that I can be refreshed through you. And I had to really make that my focus during that time. And then eventually that's when the Lord began to really even allow those feelings of closeness to come. But it started with me disciplining myself to meditate on Scripture.
And I'm thinking of the exhausted mom who now this feels like yet another task that I've got to complete, and that's spiritual time with the Lord, so I can get my bearings. And I'm sure it feels like a bundle going on my back, somewhere I've got to make some time now at the wee hours in the morning or after the kids go to bed, and then my husband's not getting my time. And how do you manage that all when it feels overwhelming? And what's the prioritization for all of it?
And you're desperate at that point.
Yeah.
Exhaustion, weariness, it makes you pretty desperate. And so it was very, very low key. That's what I meant by kind of lowering those expectations. I did not spend hours. When I was single, I would get up at 5 a.m. and I would spend a full hour with the Lord. And that was a really sweet time for me. That was not happening during this time
Did you
of
feel
weariness.
guilty?
I felt a lot of guilt, and I thought, I just can't. Lord, I cannot wake up. I've been up all night. How can I do this? And so it just started with me writing a Bible verse that I put on a note card, and I actually put it on my steering wheel so that when I got in the car, because my child also happened to hate getting buckled into his car seat, and that was a trigger too. And so it would just be this little verse that was taped to my steering wheel or on the mirror in my bathroom. And this, God He doesn't want religion from us. He doesn't want this hour every morning necessarily. He wants a relationship with us.
Yeah. And he knows what you're going through.
He does. He is sympathetic to my situation. And so for me, it was more of just these little breath prayers throughout the day. Like, Lord, I just need your help right now. I'm so tired. That is a great quiet time with the Lord.
Yes.
That 30-second little, Lord, I need you. I'm so tired.
I think our command to pray without ceasing was for moms. Because it's this, if you can just have a constant dialogue with me.
That's right.
And also that idea of giving God your first fruits, that's a hard one for mom because, I didn't have first fruits. And so I had to reprogram my understanding of what my first fruits were. Because oftentimes my first fruits happened at 11:27 in the morning,
That's
right?
the best you can do.
Like, whoa, I actually have some time right now. I'm not going to scroll through Facebook. This was a big one for me was when back in the day before children, I would, stretch in the morning, reach over to my side table, pick up the Bible, can you imagine it? And read. And then I had kids at the same time that smartphones became a thing. And now I stretch in the morning and I reach over and what do I pick up?
Your
phone.
Yep.
And I can justify it saying, my Bible app, right? But really, I notice, I have a notification from this person and I have a notification on this social media platform. And, look what they say. Oh, look what they like. But really, I want to know what God says and I want to know what God likes. So if I have a moment to scroll, I have a moment to stroll with Jesus and listen.
I like that.
And just spend some time with him. Yeah. And that has been probably the biggest way that I've been able to find first fruits. Yeah. If I have a moment to check in with everybody else, then I need to first check in with him. I want to like what he has to say before I like what somebody else. I want to follow him before I check in with the people that I follow.
Yeah. And we know that there's a lot of parents that will feel guilty. A lot of moms do about spending that time with the Lord. But Wendy and I always say, look, this is not us trying to put a burden on you, but we know that this is the thing that's going to transform you.
The secret.
This is the secret. It's not a specific formula. It's Jesus. So you've got to carve out some time with him. If it's just a little bit, let that be your focus every day.
Let me ask both of you this question because, John, you and I were husbands. And what can husbands do to help? Sometimes we feel incapable. We feel like we're out of our depth because our wives are in trouble, but we don't know exactly what to do. We're fixers, so we'll start suggesting things, which doesn't always meet the need.
The timing of those suggestions has to be really important.
I think that's the main point, is the timing of the suggestions. And if you can, just like we suggest you do in your parenting, find a moment void of the problem. We say, don't parent in the problem. Sometimes if you can't handle your responses. You need to find a time where you're not having the problem to address the problem. And I think finding a time and maybe even building it into your schedule. My husband and I went through a season where we were struggling. We weren't communicating. We were just so busy. And we were going to church. And after church, we were going to a Sunday school class for married couples. And our kids were in 2 hours of Sunday school. Anyway, what we decided to do was to drop the Sunday school class for a season and to instead go to the cafe at our church and grab a cup
and
of tea
just be together
and sit. And that was, we knew it was coming. If you know you have a built-in hour a week where you're going to talk about how are you doing? What are your struggles? How can I partner with you? And I even said, these are the questions that if you would ask them, just regardless of what follows, the fact you asked me makes me feel so entirely loved and supported that even if you have no wisdom for me, the fact you are finding a moment to do it. So I told him what I needed to hear him say. And then, of course, that was just the intro to the conversation.
You touched on this, Amber, but I want to get a little more specific with it. As the mom, we've spent 2 days now talking about a mom's anger. What if she generally is pretty good with that, and it's dad who's got the problem? But where are those boundaries where mom really needs to engage and say, honey, this is not healthy? I mean, a lot of men, we have different reasons for our anger. It could be abuse when we were children.
Yeah.
This is how they learn to parent. Men are very vulnerable to that because it's part of us.
Well, and it can come from a really good thing, too. Like, I have a very strong-willed man. The dude's got testosterone just coursing through his veins, and I find it attractive. Except sometimes he can respond with all that masculine passion towards a little person. And
then you don't find it so good.
So I think that's what you're asking about. And to just affirm, man, I love the fighter you are. Let's remember we need to fight for our children, not with them.
Wow.
You know,
or against
we need to do that in our marriages too.
You know, and ultimately too, there are some of us that are listening today who maybe do need some outside help. You know, you guys offer resources for some counseling. That's so important. You know, if you don't feel equipped, or maybe you have spoken to your spouse and there really isn't that growth that you're seeing over time, and you see that there's even some damage that's happening to your family because of that person, it's appropriate to get some help to navigate you in the right direction and to walk with you through it and to mentor and support you. But I always tell parents, and I think about this for myself as well, is that, you know, mom, maybe your husband or dad, you know, your wife is not willing to get that kind of help.
Yes.
Having at least one parent that is focused on doing the good parenting and growing in their lives spiritually and trying to apply biblical principles to their parenting is far better than not having any. And never underestimate the power of prayer for your spouse.
Yes.
You may have tried those things. They may not be working. Again, this is not about fixing other people. This is about maybe you growing in your prayer life. You know, saying, Lord, I'm desperate for change myself. I'm desperate for my spouse. I believe that you are who you say you are, that nothing is impossible for you. Your arm is not too short to save. So prove it to me, Lord.
Yes,
respectfully,
what an
prove it in our home, Lord. You want this to be a picture of how you designed marriage and the family to be. So, Lord, will you do it? Because I'm not the Holy Spirit to my spouse, but you are. And in the meantime, I'm going to look at myself. And I'm not going to be a reactionary parent myself. I'm going to respond to my children. And hopefully, if I'm living in such a way that my light is shining so brightly and I am loving unconditionally and I'm trying to draw my children with loving kindness instead of my angry reactions, that is a situation that's going to rub off on anybody that's around that all the time.
It reminds me of the verse that says, wives, do not win your husband by a word, but by your chaste and respectful behavior.
Yes.
And I think oftentimes when we model it, but my husband has said, Wendy, if you really want to see me change, pray for me. Yeah. And I remember we got married and someone gave me the gift of Power of a Praying Wife. And I remember opening it up. This was in the early days of our marriage. And I specifically went to a chapter because I thought, wow, he struggles with anger. And we had a really short courtship, so we didn't know each other very well. And I wasn't raised in an angry home, so I didn't really know what this was.
Or how to manage it.
He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at the person that cut us off, and he was angry at, it took so long for our meal.
And the dry cleaner.
Or the dry cleaner. And so I opened it up, and he had left for work. And I read through it, and I prayed through it, and I inserted his name. He came home early that day from work, and he said, Wendy, you know what's been on my mind all day? How angry I've been. And I'm not sure where it's coming from. So the next day he goes to work, and I opened up. I was like, wow, well, gee.
That worked fast.
What's next? So I opened it up, and I fold. You know how sometimes the Bible or your book, whatever, it just opens to the right chapter. So that chapter was on pride. I was like, never thought about pride before, but okay, I'll do this one, God. And I did that one. He comes home early from work. He said, I've been thinking about my anger, and do you know where I think it comes from? No. Matt, where do you think it comes from? I think it comes from pride.
Wow.
I think it comes from pride. And we had this, but I tell you, I think that the Lord allowed that to happen less for him and more for me, so that I say there is power in praying. If this is true, why are we not on our faces for our spouses and our children? So there was a season my middle boy could not fall asleep. He was struggling with anxiety, and I would stand in his doorway, and I'd put my hand on that door frame, and I would just pray. And because I remembered there is power in prayer.
That's good.
And so often, moms, dads, we just forget how powerful our prayers to God, our words to God are. And so, man, we blah, 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 blah. We just use all our words on our spouses, and we use all our words on our kids, and we use all our negative words on ourselves. And really what we need to do is we need to do two things with our words. We need to go to the Word, and then we need to use our words and talk to the Lord. And that is where the transformation really happens.
Yes.
Wow, you guys have said it, and your book Triggers is a must-read for moms and dads. I think it helps all of us, and this has been so good. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's been a joy for us. Thank you for
An
having us.
absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, I'm John Fuller, and thanks for watching. Get more info about Focus over here and more from our guests over there, and be sure to subscribe to our channel as well.